Third time's a charm. All right, we're gonna be going through right now some of the validity of the Bible, not both inside and outside the Bible itself. A lot of people ask the question of, well, the Bible is just written by men and they could put whatever they want in it. So we're gonna be looking at some various historical references, both like I said, outside and into the Bible, to show that there is some validity, and why a lot of scholars consider the Bible as a very historical piece of text. It has a lot of historical relevance to it. Okay, so we're gonna dive right in. First off, to in my opinion, the coolest parts of it. Now, there of course were throughout time. There's gonna be people that were writing history of just civilization and everything. And of these, there's a lot of stuff out there. A good number of articles that mention things in the Bible about Christ actually existing, experiences, things like that. So I'm going to dive right in to first one, which is by Cornelius Tacitus. Now, he was born around AD 52-54 ish. And he is giving in this one a report to the Roman um, people, the Caesar, whatever. I'm running on 5 hours of sleep. Bear with me. All right, it says in this that writing with the reign of Nero, Tacitus alludes to the death of Christ and to the existence of Christians at Rome. And he writes, but not all the relief that could come from man, not all the bounties that the practice could bestow, nor all the atonements which could be presented to the gods availed to relieve Nero from an infamy of being believed to have ordered the conflagration, the fire of Rome, hence to the suppressive rumors he falsely charged with the guilt, and the punishment with the most exquisite tortures and personally common called exquisite tortures the persons commonly called Christians, who were hated for their enormities. Christus, the founder of the name, was put to death by Pontius Pilate, procurator of Judea in the reign of Tiberius. But the pernicious superstition, repressed for a time, broke out again, not only through Judea, but the mischief originated and through the city of Rome as also. So right now it's just saying that he's torturing Christians, but they're saying that they existed, and the origin was from this person Christus, which is Christ or Jesus, the founder of the name, that he was put to death by Pontius Pilate, which is all in the Bible. Um, we also have some not as favorable views from the Jewish community. Of course, the Jews at the time, the ones that weren't Christian, a lot of them tend to not like Christianity too much. They thought that they didn't like that it was inclusive of the Gentiles and stuff like that. Anyways, so Lucian of the previous article is from the Annals 15.44. If you want to look it up. Lucian of Samatos also writes that scornfully he says, the man who was crucified in Palestine because of his intrusion of this new cult into the world. Furthermore, their first lawgiver persuaded them that they're all brothers of one another after they have transgressed once for by all denying the Greek gods and by worshipping that crucified sophist himself and living under his laws. So he's saying that yeah, you kind of get it from there. But saying that they existed, that Jesus started a new cult, and that they follow him. Anyways, okay, next one's a cool one. Flavius Josephat, which is somewhat debated on this one. Born AD 37 around. It says, there was a time, this Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he is a doer of wondrous works, a teacher of such men, and a receiver of truth and pleasure. He drew over them both many Jews and many Gentiles. He was the Christ, and when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men among us, was condemned to the cross, those that loved him at first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them again the third day, as the divine prophecy and foretold in his 10,000 years or so, wonderfully things that concerning him, and the 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him. And the tribe of Christians so named have not become extinct yet today. That's from Antiquity. So I think it's safe to assume he was a Christian writing on it, though. But he was in that time period as well, AD 37. So very important there. There's a bunch more by Santius, Pilinus, Tarius. A cool one, though, Thallus, the Sumerian-born historian, which is going to be AD 52 is when he wrote this. Says, Thallus in the third book of the Histories explains away this darkness as an eclipse of the sun, unreasonably, as it seems to me. Unreasonably, of course, because solar eclipses could not take place at the time of the full moon, and it was that season of the paschal full moon that Christ died. So this one's talking about the actual eclipse that happened when the world became dark, which is part of the prophecies. That when Christ died, there'd be a great darkness, and then when he died, there's a darkness. But he says that they explained it away as an eclipse, but it doesn't make sense because there wasn't a moon right that could make an eclipse. And there's some other ones as well. Now, I'm already at 5 minutes. I'm going to skip ahead to the next section. But there's a lot of outside historical references to Christ and the Bible. Next thing is going to be actually the prophecies, which is awesome. Now, these ones I'm reading off are going to be pertaining particularly to Jesus himself. And there's a lot of them, and there's like 120 somewhere. I forgot the number. But I'm going to have some of the ones that he could not have any control over, because of course there's prophecies like that he rode into the town of the donkey, which anyone could orchestrate, so it doesn't really prove much for people who don't believe. But anyway, so for instance, when Jesus was betrayed, that he was received 30 pieces of silver, Judas, and he later threw the silver into in the temple. And in Zechariah, which is Old Testament, again, about 500 years back and already published, says, "So I took these 30 shekels of silver and threw them to the potter in the house of the Lord." So the house of the Lord. And then in Matthew 27:5, it says, "And he threw the pieces of silver into the sanctuary and departed." As well as later on in Matthew 27:7, remember the potter in the house of the Lord? It says, "And they counted counsel together, and with the money bought the potter's field as a burial place for strangers." So the kind of the potter's field and potter thing, kind of cool. Anyways, moving onwards, there is a good one right. See now, Oh, here we go. Hands and feet were pierced. In Psalms 22:16, it says, "They pierced my hands and my feet." And the fulfillment, of course, Luke 23:33. "And when they came to the place called the skull, there they crucified him, and with the hands and feet drove the spikes through." Crucified with thieves is in Isaiah 53:12 in the Old Testament, because he poured out himself to death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, or the sinners. The fulfillment, at the time of the two robbers were crucified with them, one on the right, one on the left. Hated without a cause is a prophecy. In Psalm 69:4, it says, "Those who hate me without a cause are more than the hairs on my head." And the fulfillment, John 15:25, says, "But they have done this in order that the word may be filled, that is written in the law, they hated me without cause." And it's talking, of course, the people that Jesus did nothing wrong and they hated him. See here now. His side is pierced, and also no bones are broken. Now this is a cool one. The no bones are broken. It says Psalms 34:20. "He keeps all his bones; not one of them is broken." And in John 19:33, "But coming to Jesus, when they saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. Instead, they pierced him," which is another prophecy. But what they did with the other two, they break the legs to make sure that they're actually dead, or to finish off the job, or to make it, so they pass out and die. But they didn't do that with Jesus, which is important, because all the other ones, they would have been bones crushed. All right, we're running low on time, so I'm going to skip ahead. Next, also in the Old Testament, there's a lot of prophecies about civilizations, and they go through and they're fulfilled, and you can verify this with other things. But for instance, one of them is Tyre, which is where Nebuchadnezzar comes from. And in Ezekiel 26, it talks about that, "Therefore, thus says the Lord, behold, I am against you, O Tyre, and I will bring up my nations against you, as the sea brings up the waves. And they will destroy the walls of Tyre and break down the towers, and I will scrape her debris from her and make her a bare rock. For thus says the Lord God, behold, I will bring upon Tyre the northern Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, the king of kings, and the horses and chariots and cavalry and great armies. He will slay your daughters in the mainland with the sword, and he will take the siege against the wall, and cast them on the mountains against you, and raise the Lord's shield," etc., etc. Okay, in the prophecies, you can read through the rest of it. I'm running a long time. It says that Nebuchadnezzar will destroy the main city of Tyre, many nations against Tyre, make her bare rock and flat, all these things. And it goes through in this book, again, Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh McDowell. It's an older one. Some of the stuff is disputed, but there's a lot of good stuff in here. It goes through talking about the actual history of that stuff happening, how they actually were fulfilled, that Nebuchadnezzar did destroy the old city, that the many nations were against it, the debris of the water order made the castaway, all this stuff is in there. Okay, I got to wrap this up because we're only on 10 minutes. The next one I'm going to actually talk about some logical things about Christ and the validifying it. For more research, though, this is a very good book. Josh McDowell, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. And you can look in there, do a little research. Again, it's an older book, so some things are discussed. But there's a lot of stuff in history that points to it, both outside source, and why a lot of secular people still use the Bible as a very historical document. All right, got to go. Time's about to do it. Bye. God bless. Take care. Comment if you need any help. Bye.